Hey there, Jen here. Still looks dark in here. Like I got all the little things lit up. Oh, I didn't plug my other light then. Can I pause this? Can I pause this one? Let me pull something up for you guys. We're gonna pull up once again the exegesis of Philip K. Dick and talk about a topic. And I like to refer back to him because he has been a catalyst, and his writing has been a catalyst for a lot of people to kind of take control of their own reality and look around and ask questions, right? And that's the only way we're going to ever find anything out is by seeking information and through asking questions. This is going to be a pretty chill live stream. Sammy seems to be kind of active this morning. Hold, please. I'm going to put these lights on if anyone actually shows up. Give me 1 second. Look out, Sammy. It's so dark in here. I feel bad that nobody. Okay. My bad. Here we go. All right. Cool. Make sure everything's working. It looks good. Take a sip of my coffee with cinnamon. And no, I don't always drink coffee, but sometimes I do. And when I do, there's usually cinnamon in it. Okay. Sorry if I look a mess. It is what it is. I don't have stylists. This isn't that type of channel. So what we're going to talk about today is just that. We're going to attempt to answer some questions that we've been asking on the channel and in my life. And I do this, I share certain messages because I feel like it is my way of making amends for certain things that I did wrong in the past and maybe leading people astray, especially women and females with the makeup and stuff. And so, just setting that bad example. So I feel like donating my time, being charitable with my time for whoever is here, is my way of making amends and sharing my journey with you and showing you, why it's not good, why you should avoid, alcohol and, how our decisions do matter, every single one of them. Um, and I would think, I've heard both sides kind of condemn each other. And I would think that if you believe in reincarnation, you would want to do good because you want your karma to be good and you want your following lives to be, good. You want to be in a good position. And also, if you think this is the only life and that you have an afterlife, and you go somewhere after this, you would still want to do good things, even if it's narcissistic in a way, even if it's not altruistic and you're doing it because you want to get to a better place. Um, you're not doing it through love and you're not going to get to the best place, maybe, but you'll get to, regardless of which stance you take or which theology you follow, it seems to me that they both would kind of demand or require that we be the best being we can be, right? I've heard people on both sides condemn each other. Well, they only think that this is their only life, so you only live once and they do whatever they want. And then there's other people who I've seen say, in comment sections, well, they think there's an afterlife, so they don't care how they treat people here and now. That's not how I am. I don't think that's how any of us aspire to be, most people, anyways. I'm one of those people, I'm kind of an idealist, or at least I used to be until these things started happening to me. I was a dreamer in the very beginning of my life. Then I became more of an idealist. Then I switched to like realist, but what is real? What is reality? Well, we know that there is truth, and we have a common truth that we stand upon most of the time. And I do believe that in a way we're tearing apart the fabric of our own reality, the glue that holds it together, because we no longer have a common stance or a common agreement as far as how to treat one another and how to live this life side by side and still do our, individual pursuits, our pursuit of happiness, as the Constitution has said. So this is going to be kind of chill. We're going to look at this topic again. We've looked at it before, but we're going to go a little deeper with it today. I found different information, and we're looking at this for a few reasons. Number one is something happened here. Some people say it was in 2012. Some people say it was in 2017 or 18 when that eclipse happened and the alignment with the woman and the stars and all that happened in the sky. Um, and other people are saying it, something changed in our reality and just, something fundamentally changed with us in 2020. And having that thought in mind and remembering what we've read about the Hopi, how they also had a prophecy that certain beings would walk the earth who weren't intended to or weren't supposed to anymore. And because of my own personal experiences, recognizing the spirits of loved ones in other bodies and other vessels. And I know that that sounds crazy to people. Sounds crazy to me. I didn't believe in any of this type of thing. So if you are a churchianity Christian, you might not want to watch some of this if you're new in faith or something like that, because what I'm doing here is I'm trying to explore more of what Christ said and what he laid out. And I'm really interested in the fact that Mary Magdalene, who followed him through his whole ministry, but was, a supportive, you don't hear a lot from her or Mary. But when they do speak, they're rather authoritative, like Mother Mary at the wedding at Cana, and then Mary Magdalene. If you read the extra canonical books, her and Peter kind of banter back and forth and spar words. Where was I going with that? I'm sorry, coffee. So, with my own personal experiences, the Hopi prophecy and what we're seeing here, how there have been different groups of people saying that things have fundamentally changed either in 2012, 2018, or 2020. We're going to keep that in mind as we look at this. Now, I don't believe at this point where I'm at, I don't believe that this is for everyone. Um, it seems to be to me right now with what I know now that could change in an instant. Um, it seems to me that would be a broken system, that it's something that only like the Nephi do, that the Nephilim, because they're cursed, to be bodiless once they die, they just roam the earth because this is their place. There's nowhere really for them. Um, Transmigration could be their reincarnation, and we'll talk about the differences in a moment. It could be their way, right? Of living. And this is also how they keep money in the family, because your Uncle Jerry is no longer your Uncle Jerry. Now he's Uncle Jerry's son, cousin Biff, right? And so now that Uncle Jerry's spirit is in cousin Biff, he's still going to inherit all of his fortune, right? He looks different. He's younger now again. He has more experience, still has that knowledge base, doesn't have the veil of forgetfulness. Not everybody gets that. So, we're going to talk about that, keeping these things in mind, because we're asking questions about what is happening now in the fabric of our own reality. And where can we kind of maybe see glimmers of things? And I've always thought, and it seems to be prevalent in every society, that storytelling is a good way for us to learn lessons. Or maybe you have problems with tunnel vision. You always look at things through one lens, through one paradigm. And I don't believe, if you want to be empathetic and compassionate, you have to be able to look at things from different angles of this crystal prism that we seem to be inside. So let's get started. We're going to read what Philip K. Dick has to say, see if and again, he believes that the book of Acts activates something in people. I believe that Philip K. Dick's writings and Dean Koontz too, they're either prophetic or their pens are, as Shakespeare said, the pen is mightier than the sword. Maybe they have very powerful pens. Maybe their words carry power. And this is why I tell you now, please be very careful with what you say, because we seem to be finding out that we are more of a participant in creating here than maybe we first realized. So let's be open minded, but stand firm in truth and explore what's possibly happening here in our reality and ask questions seeking information. Doesn't mean you have to convert. It doesn't mean you have to think this is a good thing, right? We're exploring right now, and you're going to say, well, earlier you said you do this and you're charitable with your time as like an act of amendment to try and make up for things you've done in your past. By doing this, by exploring our reality, it equips you, right? It equips us with I don't wanna make it, like, sound computerized, but it equips us with data, with knowledge, and we're not chasing knowledge above love, right? Knowledge matters nothing at all, and the works you do matter nothing at all if they're not done with a compassionate and loving heart. Some writings can actually act as a catalyst to activate your heart again. And so this is one way that I'm using the internet, the media to try and reach people and connect again. This is why I encourage chats, but nobody talks. Um, there's always the same two people watching, probably my spouse and my son or my handlers. That's not okay with me. I don't want to be famous. I don't want my face out there, but the messages, I've been compelled. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And if you're prohibiting that, if you're impeding that, and then I have to go vagabond it and do this like face to face with people, I mean, I guess that's okay. Maybe that's what God wants. Maybe. All right, we're going to read a little bit of this. If anyone actually shows up and participates, I've been considering going back to the other channel and uploading there, but to start over again, there's only 90 people who found the channel again once it was back up. Um, or starting to post on my third channel, which I haven't posted on. And it's called Striving to be a Saint. So I might just start posting there. Maybe I'll create a new account with the laptop. Maybe that way they won't be able to get into it. I don't know. It's not normal. I always have just two people watching. It never goes up. Why? Why is that? Why does it take all day for my counter to count to 100? Every day or every time I post a video. It takes 8 hours just to get to 100 views, and I take a picture, and that's where it was when I posted it. But as you're watching other YouTubers, you see the number just keep going up and up and up, and I'm not saying I should have that many as them. I'm saying the fact that my counter takes that long shows that there's manipulation happening on the back end. It shows that somebody's monitoring them or verifying each view or changing the number of views that I see. I know computers. I know algorithms. Yes, they might change. People might change them. There's new tech out there that I don't understand because I've not looked into it and I don't want to. Um, but the foundation doesn't change. Templates remain the same. Digital, analog, these things, SIM cards, all of these things, no matter how much they glitz them up or whatever, there's nothing new under the sun. The foundation of these things remains the same. Millie B. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here. I just find it very strange that that's it. Like, there's not even like stragglers. That's not normal. In a world with allegedly billions of people and an app with millions of people, and I only get 2 every time. Like, it's just not normal. So this is Philip K. Dick's exegesis. To give you a quick rundown, it's a bunch of notes that he made, and once he passed, his friends put it together as a kind of exegesis of his life. He would take notes on napkins, on paper towel, like everything, and they just put it all together by date chronologically, the best they could, because they thought perhaps that people would benefit from some of this information. Now, over here, you have tags. I really love whoever put this website together, and I do believe that I already have it in the description box today. If you go over here to tags, if you click on a topic, it'll take you to it'll pull out every page that he wrote or note that he wrote on that topic. And why are we looking at Philip K. Dick again? Well, like I said, I believe that certain people just have a really powerful pen. They have a powerful word, you know? I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I know that they're not polished, and I know that I'm not polished. I'm just a regular person. I don't act. I don't have veneers all over my teeth and giant white teeth, but I'm just a woman and I'm doing my best here to try and study with you and share my journey with you so you can benefit from it in a cautionary way and say, huh, she said this led her down the wrong path. I'm going to avoid that altogether. And that is my hope for you, that you'll avoid some of the mistakes that I've made. So it says one of his, what I did was I pulled out, I clicked on dreams and he starts talking about certain things here. But I want to see. I believe we can click on something for transmigration. But in this, he's going over his ugh, a dream that he had, and he's trying to like ever since he had these visions back in 74, he's trying to figure out what is the real reality because he's almost having these visions and experiences and encounters with kind of another dimension, as if, we've said the world is a stage. Now, Philip K. Dick, if you've never heard of it, there's this movie called The Adjustment Bureau, and I think the kid that played Ben Affleck's friend, the kid that plays Jason Bourne, he's in it. Matthew Broderick, is that his name? Is that his name? No, I'm getting him mixed up. Wow, my brain lately. I'm sorry. When the seasons change, it's really hard on me physically, so I'm kind of just, like I said, chilling and relaxing lately. But anyway, in the Adjustment Bureau, this politician and this woman end up getting together. I think it's Emily Blunt plays the female interest. She's a ballet, a famous ballet artist. What do they call them? And they're not supposed to get together, but they do get together due to an accident. And this Adjustment Bureau, almost like the Men in Black, come from behind like reality and they're not supposed to be seen and they adjust things and fix them to get the plan of the creator of the maker back on track. Now the goal that they were after is him and her were never supposed to meet. Philip K. Dick has had experiences where he believes that our reality isn't actually a real reality. He thinks there's something behind this one, and I would have to agree to a point. This is why I believe they don't allow certain people to fly. I think flying is part of, your initiation into the club as a young person. Um, Nobody, we have all these people that fly, yet nobody can agree on the shape of the planet. If I know it's rather big, but if you go up there, you should be able to give a fair description of what it is you're seeing. Nobody ever looks out the window, and I've asked these questions before, and once again, I get no replies. So that part does get discouraging. Um, so we're going to look at what he has to say about his reality. We're actually going to type in here because I don't see it over there. Let me see if. Okay. Can I click on that? There we go. Okay, so what I did was I typed in transmigration and I wanted you guys to see how that works. You just do a search over here, and anything that he wrote about in this exegesis, you can find that way. I think that's really cool. And again, we're looking at this because I believe that authors are modern day prophets, not all of them, but some of them. And we have to decide, are they actually writing reality into existence? If that's true, again, we have to be much more careful about what we write, how much we write, and who's writing. Because in the wrong hands, that type of, I don't want to, power, I don't want to say that ability could be dangerous. So he talks about transmigration in this story, the transmigration of Timothy Archer. Now, I had never heard of that word. All I knew is I was recognizing the spirits of people I knew in different bodies. And I know that sounds wild, but he wrote about it. And so I got the word from him first because I hadn't heard of the word. And then somebody in a chat said it. And I was like, okay, so I'll look into it some more. Do I believe that it's for everyone? No, it seems like a broken system to me. My problem with it is this, and this is my problem with purgatory too. If you're set in a test zone, right? And you fail the first time, and so they send you back to like pass your grade. Um, and you don't remember anything, number 1, you're not gonna remember the mistakes you already made and the lessons you learned from making those mistakes, and being that you're essentially at the root, you're gonna have the same character flaws or the same character traits, those things don't really change. That's how I recognize certain loved ones in other vessels, and again, we most people agree that something happened in recent years to humanity as a whole. And I'm telling you, I have experience with this and I need to know why. Now, Christ, what I was going to say about Mary Magdalene, she did not recognize him when he came out of the cave. She thought he was a gardener. Let's be careful. And again, I'm not here to tear down anyone's faith. The idea is to get answers and to figure out what's happening here and now, right? But my problem with it, why I feel like it might be a kind of broken, is that if you come back like that, you're going to make the same mistakes again. Or if you know the mistakes you made and you're trying to work those off, no matter what, if you're alive and breathing and you're around other beings, something you do is going to offend somebody because we're also different. Your idea of utopia is completely different than my idea of utopia. My heaven or paradise, my ideal is different than yours because what makes you feel joy is different than what makes me feel joy. Sometimes, like Christ and God and goodness should always bring joy to our hearts, and we've kind of lost that. We've forgotten that. Even at Christmas, it used to be a much better feeling about giving, and now it's just everything is plastic, and that's why I'm exploring our reality. So, transmigration, that Philip K. Dick talks about it, is the last book that he wrote. It was published right after he died. The gentleman who put all this together basically summarizes his notes because he says they're kind of hard to understand, and so that's where we start with this. And it says he thought it was terrific, although someone who enjoys the exploration of theology that makes up most of the plot. He is someone who enjoys that. So you have to enjoy theology to enjoy that book. This is our narrator, a woman named Angel Archer, tells about her father in law, Bishop Tim Archer, who has a crisis of faith after the discovery of an ancient document casts a doubt on Jesus' divinity. It opens on the day of John Lennon's murder in 1980, but the majority of the story is flashbacks. This one is considered one of Dick's mainstream novels, and I wish he'd been given a chance to write more books like this. It's funny and smart and grounded in the real world of Berkeley, California. I just mentioned Berkeley yesterday when we were talking about antimatter, and I do believe that CERN has something to do with this. It says other things to know about this. Um, the Zakotites were an obscure Jewish sect, the Zakotite documents. It's a fictional document. Okay, so it's something he made up. Part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was invented by Dick. Now, that's all he wrote about. We're going to punch in reincarnation real quick, and then I'm going to pull up some information that I found. Now, I do this also because I like to read a lot on this channel. Again, I feel that we learn through storytelling. And so if you, hold on, if there's a book or a story that you're interested in, please put it in the comments and I can either read an excerpt from it. And I go back to books. I'll read almost a whole book, but people have to show an interest or, that can tend to be a waste of my time. Now he wrote this in January 82. He says, this has to do the tags on this are Buddhism, dialects, Hinduism, so it falls under reincarnation, which is what I typed in. Dick points out the darkness and ballast as it deals with the upcoming judgment, war, and death. He has a very Old Testament view of things here, describing the dialectic, insane, demonic side of God, something Jacob Boehm wrote about, which is usually contained by the opposite, bright or rational side. He had a hypnopompic vision about the cycle of reincarnation that we can only break out through anamnesis when we remember our past lives and can finally be saved. Now, I said this yesterday as well. There could be possible evidence if we lay all this out in a different way with Tartaria and the hidden history and the wrong calendars. It could be laid out that this is a repetitive cycle, like these resets. And one reason that I could think of for that would be that, if a person does fail in their life, if they don't find Christ and find the Christ within, and clean out their soul, clean the junk out of that, um, that we would repeat that almost like God, right? Okay, so God's will is that everyone should be saved. And I'm looking up because I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. Spiritual matters can be hard to convey sometimes. Um, how to explain this? So maybe God allows this so that everyone can be saved because God's will is that not one should be lost, right? And Christ talks about the one lost sheep. And then we hear about the prodigal son that comes back after he is spiritually lost, right? And then we hear Christ talking about the new wine bottles. All of these things indicate that God will always welcome us back, but that's we have to come back to God, right? And so if you don't do that in a life, God doesn't destroy you. He can't destroy a part of himself, right? So maybe that's what happens. And hell um is a place for beings that have just gone very dark through the process. Again, how would this fit in there? And so I guess I'm kind of at the same place as what Dick's talking about here. I have seen evidence that this process is real. I feel like it's broken a little bit unless God is the one in charge of it and doing it for our benefit. The whole veil of forgetfulness, I don't think that's how can you still learn? You're always going to be hurting somebody. If you're here to make up with good karma, it doesn't matter because if I do something good for you, the person next to you is going to feel slighted or rejected, or you're going to cause harm unintentionally. So how would you ever actually get out of the cycle? Just like eye for an eye. If you're constantly eye for an eye for an eye for an eye, you're just going to continuously feud with each other. So that's why this whole idea of reincarnation and transmigration, that's why I'm standoffish about it. And I don't know that it's something I would want to do. I don't want to forget everything I learned. I don't want to make these same mistakes again. And if these are character flaws that I have, then I need to remember the mistakes that I made so I don't make them again. I hope that makes sense. Or another possibility is that we get the reality that we believe in. If we accept and receive reincarnation as truth, then that's what we get. If we accept and receive eternal punishment and we think that's what we deserve at the time of death, maybe that's what we get for a time. I don't know. I don't know. I have all the answers. So it says he had a vision about this, and you can finally be saved once you remember all your past lives. It says anamnesis. It sounds like the opposite of amnesia. This is anamnesis. Happened to Dick at the age of 21 when he read the Jewish philosophers Maimonides' 12th century book Guide to the Perplexed, which caused him to see through the illusion of time as he became aware of multiple timelines. The other half of his salvation came from God's grace. Okay, so interesting. He also, like I've often said through my experiences, you can't be one of those people who takes grace for granted. Well, I'll be forgiven, so I'm just gonna go do this, instead of asking for permission, I'll ask for forgiveness or whatever. But you don't realize you're hurting yourself as you do things like that, right? You're getting dirtier, you're getting more blind. I see it in people around me. They used to be so intelligent and so wise, and now it's like it is legitimately like, who are you? I look at it as my karma, like, I was careless before, I was the one who worked, I would kinda throw clothes wherever. My spouse was the one who kept the house, and I went out and earned the money, and a lot of people disagreed with that, but I made good money, so he stayed home, and he did a good job as far as I could tell. Nowadays, I feel like he brought a woman in, and she did it all, but, that's what I'm saying, when people change like that, there has to be a reason, and did this happen en masse in, like, 2018, 2019? Did whatever's happening in our sky or our solar system, yes, I do believe in a firmament, but I also believe that there is things up there, obviously. Um, so, let's talk about those things, but I can definitely relate to seeing through the illusion of time. I have had that problem, some people call it a problem, since I don't work right now or haven't worked regular for a while now. Um, I see how time sometimes goes really slow and sometimes goes really fast, and I'm not really on a set schedule. So I'm kind of outside of time in my own way. So it helps me to go deeper with these topics and these things, and I think we need to be able to do this, and we need to be able to have these open discussions about our spirituality and who are we? Why are we here? Why are there so many stories running in the background? Is it authors creating other realities, right? And you see it on YouTube, right? You punch in Las Vegas, you see somebody there on vacation, and you see a bunch of people. But then you see videos right now, side by side, somebody else went down there and like, "Why is it so empty here? What's going on? Why are the hotels so empty?" So, what is going on? Are we each living our own reality? Like, what's happening with that? I live in California, Lily Bay said. I bet it's beautiful. Okay, so let's continue. He compares this to the Hindu and Buddhist idea of maska, when someone escapes the weary wheel. And we've talked about the wheel before too. Wheel in the sky. People think that it's just aliens or this, that, or the other. There are some short stories about it as well, that when you die, there is this wheel that you go through. And all I can think of is one of the old water mills, right? With the wheel going through the water. That's what I kind of relate that to. It says, 374, March of year 74, and we're in June 82, he's writing this, might have been his nirvana. All of this involves being liberated along a right angle axis, whatever that means, which he says is the fifth dimension revealed to him through Diba Kaku. Okay, so now he's exploring the Buddhism theology. And again, that's kind of why I'm exploring too, is I, if I were the devil, I would split all of it up. I would split, any true story, ancient text, because you can't get rid of truth, right? I would split it up among the peoples and put it on each landmaster, put it with each tribe just a little bit, and then, put a bunch of leaven in there, a bunch of fake stuff, if that's possible. But if you can't do that, then I would absolutely give this text to this group, this text to this group, this text to this group, make sure that they hate each other so they're never talking and discussing. That way, for whatever reason, people, because there is a side of this that is evil. Like the devil can't, Satan, whatever that is, wickedness can't do anything without permission of the one, the creator, the maker, the fabricator, God. They can't do anything without his permission in the end, right? So we need to think about these things as well. Especially when we're talking about salvation, I believe you have to participate in your own salvation. You can't just be somebody who takes that grace and, "Well, I'll ask for forgiveness later." Um, that is somebody who's lacking in self-awareness, and I know this because I was stuck in that for a time, because of some of the things that I had done wrong, some of the harm that I had caused. It didn't hurt just other people. Again, it made me spiritually blind. I had no discernment. I had no type of good judgment. I put myself in ridiculous situations that I should not have been in. So yeah, it says in the fifth dimension, everything exists now at the same time simultaneously. I've heard this same thing said in other theological or spiritual groups online. So that's not the first time I've heard that. Oh, because there is no time, right? Everything is right now. I think that's how God sees everything, like, from above, and, if we're like the West world down here, he can go to anyone's life and look at certain things whenever he wants. And that's why it's so hard for us to explain because we're in it, right? You can't see what it is completely, and I think that's why we need to share information. He says he calls it hypertime where Valis and others live. Now, Valis is like his AI character. He wrote a book about it. He wrote a book about all of these he wrote stories and books about his life experiences. So a lot of his notes echo his stories because of that, right? And a writer will often they write about things they know, but they're also it's cathartic. They're trying to work out the problem as they're writing. I know this because I journal and I feel like that's what I'm trying to do is to like see things maybe in a different way. But we got to again, we got to talk about supernaturally speaking is writing, the act of writing ritualistic. There was a show on Prime that I watched. I think I talked about it on the other channel maybe with Courtney Cox, and she started writing, and it was a ritual for her. She would put on red lipstick, she would light a cigarette, she would go up in her attic all by herself, put her laptop up or whatever, and then she would start writing and wouldn't stop. And it was affecting reality. That's what I'm talking about when I say, is the pen truly mightier than the sword? Is this why we have so many things echoing in the background of our reality? Sometimes I think we should just shut the media down completely. Everything except for, like us, talking to each other and DIY videos and things where you can learn things. But this media stuff where they're just slinging mud at each other and lying about everything, like, just everything. You can't trust people like that. When they lie about who they are every single day for a living, you can't trust anything they say then. Alright, so mm, mm, mm. He calls it hyper time. He says, "They can see us, but we can't see them. All we are aware of is their influence, aka the perturbation in the reality field on our 4D world." He claims to have received a signal burst, which he describes as a musical mathematical color sequence. That's interesting. And I wanna bring up a movie. We're gonna look into, the old '80s movie, He-Man, because they do that. That's how they open portals, is with tones and sound, kind of like Richard Dreyfuss and the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In He-Man, they have, like, this thing, and they click the keys on it like a keyboard, but it opens a portal, depending on which keys you use. Kind of like David played a song for the Lord, and he liked it so much. It reminds me of that, and I believe that that's possible and that there are doors on the earth and that you can get closer to the city. And is the city here now? Are we in Satan's short season and the city of the saints is actually here? Now he's saying he received a signal burst from the previous night that proved to him they were external and didn't exist just in his mind. So he can get pretty interesting. All right, let's take a look at something. I did a regular old search, so I'll bring that up for you, make sure it comes up. And I want you to see what we're talking about here because there are some mothers or some people, individuals, but oftentimes mothers, wives, women, um, and all people who are spiritually attuned, people who have cleansed their body and whatnot, they are able to discern the spirits, right? And we have read in the Bible about discerning spirits being a gift of the Holy Spirit. Let me look that up real quick now that I know everything's working. Did I send this to you? To me? We're going to look at this and then I'm going to pull something else up. I didn't want this to be too long. Okay, I can get through this pretty quick, I think. I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to have to open my mailbox to pull up the next thing for you guys and share it with you. All right. So we're going to look discerning spirits up because this is how, and again, I have to explain this is how I recognize that this is a thing that's happening. Now, discerning the spirits is a spiritual gift in Christian theology that allows an individual to distinguish between different spiritual influences, such as the Holy Spirit, demonic spirits, or the human spirit. It is a supernatural ability to perceive and understand the origin of spiritual manifestations, enabling one to respond appropriately to what is occurring in the spiritual realm. This gift involves sensing spiritual origins and can manifest as an inner knowing, an impression, or a vision. How discouraging that nobody watches. Oh, I am getting discouraged, guys, and I'm at a loss anymore. I thought I was doing what God wanted me to do, but if it's not working and nobody's seeing anything of my testimony, like then it's all been for nothing and it's a waste of time. And I just don't even want to think of it. All right. So discerning spirits is how I was able to know that my loved ones were in different vessels. And it's almost to me, it's almost like when Superman puts the glasses on and nobody recognizes him. For me, it's like that. I'm like, how can you not see who that is, right? Because everybody has just an essence about them. They have their own mannerisms, their own personality. And I said, especially mothers, because mothers carry life inside them. They have a connection with their children that sometimes the fathers just don't have. They have a different connection that mothers don't have, right? So, that complements each other. It's not supposed to be a competition. Just to make that clear. I don't want this to be like a gender bashing channel on each side or either side. I just don't want it to be a sling and mud or bashing type of channel. And the sad thing is like that's what people are mostly looking for these days. Let me make sure that everything's working still. Oh no, there it is. Good. Okay. So that's how I was able to know. And that's why I decided I have to look into this because this is real. This is something apparently that certain individuals are able to do and control it, kind of on command. So let's check this out and then I'm going to bring something else up. And I just want like I said, we're looking at this a little deeper. I've mentioned it before, but let's take a look at what each theology thinks about this. Transmigration of the soul, also known as metempsychosis, appears in various ancient texts from traditions like Greek, Hindu, and early Jewish philosophy, suggesting the soul moves to a new body after death. This concept is prominent in Greek Orphism and Pythagorean. Pythagorean. Oh, his name gets me every time. Pythagoras, Pythagoreanism. Okay, that word, where the soul's journey is cyclical and can involve both human and animal bodies. See, I don't think people go into animals, but that's just me. We're entirely different. We have different spirits. That can't happen until spiritual release is achieved. In ancient Indian texts like the Bhagavad Gita, the soul is described as an eternal and unchanging, taking on new bodies like one changes old clothes to continue its journey. Again, I've seen evidence that this exists. My problem is that it apparently is happening before the death of a body. Um, and it's almost like musical chairs. People have just swapped. Some people are older, some people are younger. And then you see old people who are suddenly a lot younger than they should be. So we're seeing a lot of things that are happening. And when I say that I have experience with this, I'm not talking about just seeing it on a screen. I'm talking about Hey, I recognize that person. I'm talking about real life. Okay. But again, don't accept, receive, or believe certain things as truth unless they ring true for you, and take it to God. Go pray, go meditate, go listen for him to answer you. Ancient Greek texts. Okay, so this is what they all think of transmigration. Man, our garbage truck gets later and later every week. Orphism. This mystical tradition held that a soul is reborn into different bodies, human or animal, in a cycle of reincarnation that can be escaped through religious purification. Pythagoreanism, that was a little better, by the philosopher Pythagoras, taught metempsychosis, suggesting that his followers should practice recalling their past lives to strengthen their memory and eventually remember their previous incarnations. Okay, so again, there's two sides to this story, and I'm just going to present you with the information. Um, I have had experience with this too over the last 8 years. You know, when you have intense trauma or something happens to you, you have like a near death experience, or you open doorways by doing substances that you shouldn't be doing. All three of those things happened to me near at the same time. And so I was shocked awake. It was like somebody threw my spirit in a cold pool of water, you know? And I was like, "Oh my god, this place is a lot different than I thought. I've really messed up. I'm not who being who I should be. I need to like turn around and change really quickly before I end up like that or they take me like I the demonic, you know, it can scare you back to God. And I call that the fear of God now because I wasn't afraid of the demons per se. I was more afraid of, oh my God, I'm going to be judged. You know, God is real and I've done some bad things in my time. And again, this is why I urge you to stay clear of certain substances because they do things that number one, you might not be ready for, right? You need to wait on your own time and God's time for Him to show you certain things. And certain things we're not supposed to see as human beings. That veil is there for a reason. So, this is why I discourage nowadays partaking in certain substances. But for me, and this is not everybody's way, again, my story is a cautionary tale. For me, I went the route of sinner to salvation. I would not have come back to God. I was so blinded where I was at that point in time. I had turned into such a materialist and such a hedonist. Person's pulling out. I wonder why. Sorry, I'm Nebby. And all the stuff I've been through, I think, you know, I should be aware of what's going on around me. All right. So let's go to Greek philosophy. The philosophers like Pythagoras suggested that the souls of the wicked might be condemned to lower life forms, while virtuous souls would eventually become one with the air or be deified, you know, be turned into a deity. Mormon philosophy is very much like that as well, or theology, their actual theology. Catholics are and Christians are the only one of the only groups that don't teach some type of migration of the soul. Unless you're talking about after death and like going through purgatory and this type of thing. And but that's my other question too. How would purgatory work if you knew you were in purgatory? Is it a fake reality? Is it really close to Earth, but like this, we're almost trapped in one area because it's just a mock-up while we sit here and we get refined and get cleaned up, almost like going through a decontamination process, right? Before we are let into paradise. Um, if you don't know, like, wouldn't you still be able to do wicked if it looks exactly the same and it is the same basic, you know what I mean? So that's my problem with like this eye for an eye and doing thing, you know, if you give everyone the day that they deserve, you should get the day that you deserve too. And we all at this point, you know, I think we've been kind of lost as a collective to materialism. People don't want to talk about spiritual matters. They don't care. Genuinely, like the younger generations, they will tell you they flat out don't care. And I think that's tragic and sad. And this is why, again, you can't be afraid of looking into other people's beliefs. You need to be able to talk to them and relate to them. You need to understand them a little bit to have compassion for your neighbors. So that's another reason that it's okay to look at other religions. I feel like that's where the church goes wrong in almost like forbidding certain things, because then it's like the forbidden fruit and people, might fall into those theologies. What we're doing is we're looking at them and trying to understand what's happening here in our reality, because it's more than what we've learned biblically speaking. It's more than, definitely more than what we've learned in secular school. What happened to people? Was it just the things in the arm, or is there something more that occurred? And how often does it occur? From my research, it looks like something takes place every 100 years, but I could be off on that. And that's the other thing, cannibalism. Every negative rabbit hole that I've gone to leads to that. These people don't believe in most of these people don't believe in cannibalism because it's a human body, it's a soul's house, and they don't believe in that. There are those certain, I forget what their name is, and they are in India, where they will sit with dead bodies and put their ashes on their face and stuff. I think they do it. I forget what they said. They do it to not be afraid of death, right? When it's their time. It sounds strange to us, but that's what they do. And then you have certain cultures that promote things like cannibalism, because they believe that if you do that, you're taking on whatever power or energy or essence or ability that person or those people had. Some people believe it makes you younger, and so how would reincarnation and transmigration fit into that? So again, these are things that we're just exploring, because we're wondering. We have to understand to a point what's happening in our reality, because we've not been taught these things in an honest and open manner. Ancient Indian texts and Hinduism, the concept of samsara is central to many texts. The Bhagavad, I know how to say this word. Bhagavad Gita explains that the soul is unborn and eternal, and it simply sheds its body like a worn out garment to be reborn in a new one. Buddhism, according to Buddhist scriptures, the Buddha believed in an afterlife and reincarnation, though this differs from the Hindu concept of an eternal, unchanging soul. That's interesting. Hinduism and Buddhism, I guess, are very close, and I don't know enough about them, so sometimes I might confuse them. Please show me some grace there, or if you know more about them, please share when I air so that I can be corrected. Yoga. You see, and we have Christians doing it, or they say they're Christian anyway. And again, a lot of these people, they knew that they weren't Christian. Yoga is rooted in Hindu philosophy. They don't even care if you believe in Jesus. They just want us in the lane where persecution is set to happen, the undesirables. Because some people, that's what TIs are. Some people wanted revenge, and in the end, it is happening because God knew and our enemy knew what we would choose in the end. And sometimes persecution comes before you even make that choice, because things begin in the spirit. I hope that makes sense too. So it says yoga is rooted in Hindu philosophy and is a practice that, along with meditation, is meant to help the individual achieve release from the cycle of rebirth. Interesting. I don't meditate enough. I mean, I meditate as I walk, right? And I don't empty my mind. That's how I've been doing. Some people call it shadow work, right? I call it just self-improvement, being accountable, looking at myself and saying, okay, these things are wrong with me. And for me, things will come to the surface when they're ready. And it's like, oh, something did earlier today, and I was like, oh, okay, that's the next thing that I have to work on in within myself, right? Because it's not narcissistic to be accountable for it's not self-centered to look at yourself and do the work that you need to do to become a better person or the soul that you're meant to, or to clean up your soul, those are good things that you should be doing, that we should be doing. But again, you have a lot of persecution will come from within the church, and a lot of people don't understand that that's how that's going to work. It's going to like it, I was called a witch. Like I'm just so sick of. We're supposed to judge to a point, like, so you know what you want in your life, who you want in your life, who you want around your children, discernment, right? I don't think we cannot judge and we should not be judging. That's a good person. That's a bad person. That person's going to Hades. That person's going to heaven. That's not our job. We should stay in our lane. And when God talks about, judgment, and Christ says, You judge a person by their fruits," you have to know who you're dealing with people, and you have to be wise navigating these choppy seas of life that we're in right now. So the Kabbalistic tradition, later Jewish mysticism, discusses transmigration such as in the Zohar. That interests me, which sometimes describes the soul of one person passing into another, either for punishment or to fulfill a missed opportunity, as seen in commentaries on the Levirate marriage law, according to the Jewish Encyclopedia. What does that have to do with a marriage? That interests me. Sorry. Other traditions, Gnosticism, early Gnostic thought includes concepts of the soul's transmigration to escape a corrupt material world. But where is the soul migrating to? See, when I'm speaking of it, I mean like into other bodies, other vessels. Early Islam, some early Islamic texts contain references to reincarnation, and it's called Tana Shuku, which is distinct from the Quranic belief in resurrection, Mayad, like Mayat. The Quran has resurrection in it? Interesting. Maybe we are more alike than they've told us, and again, they just want us fighting. I'm gonna pull up something else that I found. I want to show you guys about this topic to get a little deeper into it. And again, as you go about your day, consider certain things and think about them if they, please let me pull this up. Think about these things when you're dealing with people and ask yourself, how much have people changed? People watch, observe your loved ones, the people around you. Have they changed? Why? Are their tastes different? Do they eat different food? Again, women know their smell, know what certain things are like. I think we can relate to God. We compassionate towards God. We can extend compassion towards God and grace towards God in that same area. Okay, let me make sure you guys can see what's up. All right, so this is going to explain it a little deeper for those who are new to this. And I read a few new things in here myself. So let's check it out. And this is actually coming from a religious website. It says is metempsychosis, in other words, the doctrine of transmigration of souls, teaches that the same soul inhabits in succession the bodies of different beings, both men and animals. Stop real quick. If what I'm saying is true, if I actually have seen evidence of this, um, oh shoot, I lost it again. Too many things on my mind. Teaches the same soul inhabits in succession. Oh, quantum entanglement. That might also prove that quantum entanglement is real because it's the same people I know, but they're in different bodies. And I think you have to share DNA with the person. And I'm going to show you at the end of this a quick QR question where somebody obviously knows a little bit about this, and she gives a couple interesting details in a post. So I want to go to that before we close out the video. But we'll go through this pretty quickly. It says it was a tenet common to many systems of philosophic thought and religious belief, widely separated from each other, both geographically and historically. So people all over, kind of like the pyramids, people all over seem to inherently understand back then, right? They knew they had a soul, that was a given. They knew there was a God. And back then, They're saying this must have resonated with people because people on different land masses in different cultures all had the same belief. Although in modern times it is associated among civilized races almost exclusively with the countries of Asia and particularly with India, which we just read, there is evidence that at one period or another it has flourished in almost every part of the world, and it still prevails in various forms among savage nations scattered over the globe. So consider something for me since there's a couple people watching. Consider something. What if we all say Trump is different this time? I mean, he wasn't a dream the first time, let's be honest. Like, as a president, he's kinda gruff, and his speech, like, he's not as eloquent as someone like Obama, in his words. I'm not saying anything about character or anything like that. But we also see, like, his mannerism, like, his manner seems to have changed. If this is true, what if a part of their ritual, if he is the Antichrist, what if his spirit and the spirit of Antichrist went to his son, Baron? What if he's there now and that's who's going to come out of nowhere and kind of because obviously he has hybrid genes. He's v super tall. Like, I don't even wanna talk about it. And we've talked about the last migration of giants being in Washington, DC. This, I believe, is the way that they operate because otherwise they're bodiless. Because God said there's nowhere else for you to go. Because they weren't supposed and I don't things are still going on, so there must be a reason for it. God is allowing us to all be here, and we're here together, and he always goes after the lost sheep. I don't know if they can't repent, they won't repent, I'm not sure what forgiveness is not for them, it says in the Bible. So it gets pretty harsh, but then it says God's will is that everyone is saved. So do with this information as you will, but I have seen that it happens. And a good movie, like I've told you before, to look up is to look up the plot of The Golden Child. I think we might have done it on the channel, but check out the movie because obviously seeing it and hearing it in story form can help you understand a little better than me just reading it. Okay, so it still prevails in India. There's evidence that at one period or another, it flourished in almost every part of the world. Everybody believed in transmigration, and it still prevails in various forms among savage nations scattered over the globe. This universality seems to mark it as one of those spontaneous or instinctive beliefs, yeah, inherent, by which man's nature responds to the deep and urgent problems of existence, whilst the numerous and richly varied forms in which it assumes in different systems, right? So they're saying there it's in a variety of different faith systems. It's just matched to that culture. And he's saying it seems to be inherent. He is just short of that Bible verse saying God's ways are written on our heart. So it's interesting that everybody at one time kind of knew this was a thing, which is just depressing for me because I don't like the idea of the veil of forgetfulness. Like, I'm not sure how I feel about all this. But again, I can't hide things from myself and be willfully ignorant. And this is why I encourage people, it's okay to look at things and read them to get a better understanding of other people in the world and yes, your own reality. Christ was not recognized by Mary Magdalene when he came out of the tomb. What is the reason for that? And when they say that they put him in somebody else's tomb, was that somebody else in there too? I'm just saying, these are questions I have. With Christ, I believe it was like quantum, oh, what do they call that? I think that's what helped with the resurrection if we're looking for a word to explain the process. Okay, so it says, whilst the numerous and richly varied forms in which it assumes, meaning it's a little different, and many colored mythology in which it has clothed itself, show it to be capable of powerfully appealing to the imagination. Ooh, that can be dangerous, and of adapting itself with great versatility to widely different types of mind. The explanation of this success seems to lie partly in it being an expression of the fundamental belief in immortality. Part fundamental belief in immortality. Again, that's something else that seems to be written on a lot of our hearts. We know that we're eternal. And no, that doesn't give you a right to go and treat people like crap then. It means you should do better because we're all kind of stuck together, right? So we should all do better at how we treat each other. That's the goal of the channel, and that's the goal of sharing my embarrassing testimony with you guys. Okay, so it says it's a fundamental belief in immortality, partly in its comprehensiveness, binding together, as for the most part, it seems to do, all individual existences in one single unbroken scheme, partly also in the unrestrained liberty which it leaves to the mythology, well, the imagination, basically, he's saying there again. So here's the history of transmigration. This will give you a better idea of how this floated kind of around the earth to the four corners of the earth. History, Egypt. Herodotus, Herodotus, Herodotus tells us in a well-known passage that the Egyptians were the first to assert the immortality of the soul, and that it passes on the death of the body into another animal, and that when it has gone the round of all forms of life on land, in water, and in air, then it once more enters a human body born for it. I don't want to be an animal. I think we have different spirits. I don't think we're meant to do I don't think that human beings made by God with his image are meant to do that. Okay? And I'm just being real. So that part of this I'm completely rejecting, but that's me. And this cycle of the soul takes place in 3,000 years. Yeah, I'm rejecting that too. The doctrine, now this gets interesting. The doctrine first originated with the Egyptians is unlikely. It almost certainly passed from Egypt into Greece, but the same belief had sprung up independently in many nations from a very early date. This also could be attributed to it being false religions, right? He said it's in different systems. It could be false religions sprung up by the Rephaim, the Nephilim, the Canaanites of old. They could be the ones starting this because, again, there's no place for them. So they have to arrange something as to where they can have bodies. This is why possession is a thing. They want to live again. If that is their only choice, is to live as a person or to be a wandering spirit, right? And be called evil because people don't know what's going on in their homes or their houses or wherever, they would rather be alive again. So again, do with this information as you will. Some of this I'm completely rejecting. I'll just be, blunt about that. Says the accounts of Egyptian metempsychosis vary considerably. Indeed, such a doctrine was bound to undergo modifications according to changes in the national religion. In the Book of the Dead, it is connected with the notion of a judgment after death. Transmigration into infrahuman forms being a punishment for sin. That's basically saying that when you go into a lower life form, because you're made in the image of God, that's some type of punishment because your karma. Again, I kind of reject that, but you do with the information what you will. This is what they believe. And now you have to understand that a lot of the people on television, entertainment, like Babylonianism, Judaism, and into the Kabbalah, the actual occult Kabbalah. At the root of that, their systems, they are the same. That's why it says we're seeing this all over, but it's a little different in each culture, right? In each people group. So, I'm just offering possibilities. But I know that something's happening. I know that I know that, through discerning of spirits, I've recognized my loved ones in different vessels. And so that's why I keep searching for answers. And it's also why, even though I don't want to be where I'm at, perhaps the maker wants me here, and I was the one who was careless and not self-aware before with my spouse. So maybe now that's why I have one who is the same way to me. So again, my testimony is a cautionary tale. Okay, so in Herodotus' account given above about wicked people going to lower, it says certain animals were recognized by the Egyptians as the abode, right, as the body, as the vessel of specially wicked people and were on this account, according to Plutarch, preferred for sacrificial purposes. Oh. In Herodotus' account given above, this ethical note is absent, and transmigration is a purely natural and necessary cosmic process. Plato's version mediates between these two views. He represents the Egyptians as teaching that ordinary mortals will, after a cycle of 10,000 years, return to the human form, but that an adept in philosophy, a master in philosophy, somebody well researched in it, who understands it, may hope to accomplish the process in 3,000 years. There was also a pantheistic form of Egyptian metempsychosis. Pantheistic is when you believe in a variety of different gods, and so you ask one god for the rain, you ask another god for sun, you ask this god for money, right? Which is actually kind of how it is, but we call it, like Christians call it, God's hierarchy. But honestly, it's very similar. So we have to be careful in these days because I think we're all going to find out our religions and our faith systems are more alike than different. But I think to get there, for some reason, there's always like war first to wake other people up, to wake up the sleepers. They have to like see the fruit of their desire for destruction, and then they can wake up once other people are deceased because of all the goings on. My goal is to wake people up before that happens, get you to be accountable for your own doings the best you can, and even your trauma, to get you to look at that. And when you're meditating, when things like that come up, don't push them away. Look at it and face your fear, right? And if you are a better you, then you're a better neighbor, you're a better daughter, son, you're a better husband, spouse, right? You're a better aunt, whatever. And that spreads out, that ripples out to everybody. So they're saying that it's a necessity for the soul. So the pantheistic form of Egyptian metempsychosis, the individual being regarded as an emanation from a single universal principle to which it was destined to return after having completed its cycle of necessity. There are traces of this doctrine of a cosmic cycle in the fourth, Eclogue of Virgil. It has been thought that the custom of embalming the dead was connected with this form of the doctrine, the object being to preserve the body intact for the return of the soul. I think that's the opposite, though. We're not supposed to allow those things to be done so that we can resurrect. If you're putting chemicals in there, remember, when the Marys went to the tomb, they they covered him in oils, natural oils, olive oil probably, maybe some primrose, things of that nature. Things of nature, not like formaldehyde and all these. I don't think we're supposed to be doing that. That's my opinion, okay? Um, I think it's also Satan's funny idea. Hey, if we bury them in the dirt, God won't be able to resurrect them, and we'll put them 6 feet under. Like, do you see what I mean? How this place is? It's a little weird. All right, so pantheistic and okay. It had been thought the custom of embalming the dead was connected with this form of the cosmic cycle in the fourth eclogue of Virgil. Sorry about that, my ring light went out. So it says it is probable, indeed, that the belief in such a return helped to confirm the practice, but it can hardly have provided the sole motive, meaning the only motive, not the soul with a U, since we find that other animals were also frequently embalmed. Interesting. It makes me wonder again if that's another case of the fallen ones teaching us incorrectly on purpose. Because again, I don't personally think at this point in time with everything I've learned, I don't think we're supposed to be doing that, embalming ourselves or burning ourselves like cremation. If we are at a time, and we read Acts on this channel together not long ago, and at the end of Acts, it said Paul and Peter had already spread the gospel. It's already been spread to the four corners. So now I can only imagine God's just waiting for all the souls to be baked, cooked, refined. Um, Or it could be something worse, which I don't want to delve into, at least not yet. I've not meditated enough on the topic to bring it up and bring it out to other people. So I need to think about it some more. But anyway, things to think about. Greece. Now, Greece's belief on transmigration, it says it's already stated, probably borrowed the theory from Egypt. According to the tradition, it had been taught by Musaeus and Orpheus, and it was an element of the Orphic and other mystic doctrines. I believe that the Norse do it too. And all these beings, all of these, all of these empires were led and started and created by men of renown, by the Nephilim, by the giants, by the Canaanites. We don't see them face to, how do I explain this? Some of them are YouTubers and they're bigger, they are big, but they disguise it with cameras. I think lockdowns in part were so certain beings who were around and awake could move about without scaring the populace. I know that sounds weird. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but we've seen evidence all over that giants are a thing. And I also think that we have hybrids living among us now, but they've worked so well on the genetics. They've either made it or it is a recessive gene. And so you don't have people getting that large, but they still have the abilities. They're probably still great at sports, great, singers, musicians, right? Good with numbers. Maybe they're mathematicians. They are even now men and women of renown because they have a little bit of both. And I don't think that makes them better. And I don't think it makes us better that, I don't think we're supposed to play God in this scenario. They do coexist with us, so we have to do the best that we can, and we're supposed to treat everyone the same and not be respecters of persons either. So it can be a fine line that we have to walk as far as how to treat certain people and how to treat each other. They want us to get into a place of civil disobedience at this time. A lot of these YouTubers are in the club, and you can't be in the club if you don't have the right genetics. Wearing the 2 pairs of sunglasses on the head, 2 or 3, that's one of their symbols. It's a signal of something to one of their people. I don't know what it means yet. My son did it in his, homecoming pictures with his friends. He's got, like, 3 pairs on. RFB does it occasionally, and he gets smart about it. Like, years ago when I first noticed it, somebody said it in the comment section, and he's like, "The person that it's for knows what it's about." Alright, guy. Cool. So you have a right to know who you're listening to. You have a right to know whose information that you're taking to the bank as truth. They want us in a place of disobedience because they know the meek inherit the earth. They know we're being monitored, especially close right now, and they want us in error. So be very careful about what you believe. Again, we need to know the basis of what's going on here and what they're doing behind closed doors. Because some are our family and our friends, or they're harming our family, our friends, or ourselves, right? And that's bad for the whole community, not just one person or family. So even if you're the type of person you don't care about people, well, it's bad for your whole community, which if you reside there is bad for you too. So it's good to like work on yourself, and it's good to be honest about what's going on in the world so that you can navigate properly. And that's what they don't want us navigating with proper knowledge and applying that with wisdom to our daily lives. Because wisdom is just using knowledge in the way that it's meant, in the good way, in the best way that it can be used. And not everybody can do that. Some people are just intellectual, they learn things in a book, but they can't apply it. I used to have problems with that, and you have to work on that. You have to know your shortcomings and work on them and participate in your own salvation and redemption. And that's what I mean when I say participate, is to just be accountable for the person that you are and look at yourself in the mirror and do this meditation on, okay, how can I be better? And when you're meditating, don't evict all thoughts. Focus on one thought or question that you have, and then let whatever comes up at that point kind of come up. So this is interesting. It says Pindar represents it in this relation. The introduction of metempsychosis as a philosophical doctrine is due to Pythagoras, who we are told gave himself out as identical with the Trojan hero Euphorbus. Interesting. And added copious details of his subsequent soul wanderings. Vegetarianism and a general regard for animals was the practical Pythagorean deduction for the doctrine. Plato's metempsychosis was learnt from Pythagoreans. He gave the doctrine a philosophical standing such as it never possessed before. For Plato exhibits the most elaborate attempt in the history of philosophy to find in the facts of actual experience justification for the theory of the pre-existence of the soul. So see, much like Plato, we don't want to just look at the superficial and the surface level of things. We want to go deeper to grasp things as a person and to practice. You have to practice with things, right? Or your muscles, or they atrophy. We want to hone the skill of critical thinking. We want to bring back and reawaken critical thinking in ourselves and each other. And so we have to understand how all of these different people can operate and coexist together and still maintain their own identity, still keep their culture, their religion. That's important, I think. Because that's a part of free will too. If we all want to merge into one, well, then again, that should also be a part of our free will, something that happens naturally and organically and not because we're forced, because forced conversion of any kind never works. And it ends up being very painful for all parties involved because you're trying to force something. So everybody is kind of suffering because of that. I hope that makes sense. So Plato, he's going deeper. He wants to understand, he wants justification. He doesn't want just now you once you have evidence, right? He wants justification for that evidence. Well, why? Just justify this for me. Tell me why, this should be a thing. So for Plato exhibits the most in the theory of the pre-existence of the soul. So he is wondering about before we come into this body, and it says, excuse me, that God knits us in our mother's womb. He wants to know if we make the, like some theories say today, some new age groups and religions say today, he wants to know if our souls were already in heaven with God and decided to come down here or made the decision in some way to live this life. It says, in particular, sundry arguments adopted later on to prove immortality were employed by him to establish preexistence. Wow. Such were the proofs from universal cognitions and the natural attraction of the soul towards the one, the permanent, and the beautiful. Plato ascribes to these arguments a retrospective as well as a prospective force. He seeks to show that learning is but a form of reminiscence and love is but the desire for reunion with a once possessed good. See, I wouldn't agree with that because love is like truth. It's firm, it's strong, a good foundation. It's always there. So that's different for me. But the desire with the once possessed good. Man is a fallen spirit full of forgetfulness. I would agree with that. His sole hope is by means of education and philosophy. Again, this is why we do this on this channel to recover his memory, to activate something inside, right? To reawaken people's compassion, empathy, to just get you asking again, what animates my body? How does my body move? What controls it? I know I have a thought, but what puts the thought there? Your spirit, your animus, it animates your vessel, your temple. And, again, that's why this channel exists, is to get people to start at least asking that question again. So he's this man and is a fallen spirit full of forgetfulness. His sole hope is by means of education and philosophy to recover his memory of himself and of truth, and thus free himself from the chains of irrationality that bind him. Thus, only can he hasten his return to his true fatherland, his home, and his perfect assimilation to the divine. Neglect of this will lead to further and perhaps permanent degradation in the world beyond. That's always been my fear for people, especially people that I love. If you're neglecting your spirit or your soul, or you're doing things that are like suffocating your spirit, like your own spirit is saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that drug, or I don't want to look at this, right? I know it's wrong. I don't want to do this, but you're ignoring that. Um, and you're neglecting being accountable and doing the spiritual work that you need to do for, and here, let's say you turn into what is called in the Bible a reprobate. If you die in that state, that's how I kind of think things will happen. It's the hell is when you just turn, it's permanent degradation. Like you can't come back from that. That's why I think that like the deceased Nephilim and demons are a little bit different. Demons are the actual fallen angels. The Nephilim are the sons and daughters, I think. But I think again, people can turn into something just as ugly, right? It says the wise man will have an advantageous transmigration because he has practiced prudence. What does that mean? What we talked about yesterday, discipline, discipline in your body, letting your spirit be the master of your domain, which is your vessel, your temple, and you, the spirit you, controlling how much you eat, if you drink or not, abstinence. Are you and I've been asking God for help with this. Do you need help with temperance? Are you practicing moderation? That's what prudence means, but in its most raw form, right? Prudence is when it's like John the Baptist going to the wilderness and only eating honey and locusts or whatever. That in a sense is prudence. There's no bills, there's no rent, there's no material things to get in the way of what we're here to do, which is to work on that soul. And to, I do believe we are here also to enjoy each other, to love each other. Okay, so it says the vicious, ignorant, and passion blinded man. That means lustful. And you can have lust for anything in life, right? You can be lusty for alcohol, which is alcoholism. You can be full of lust for, sensual things, which is promiscuity or whatever. You can be lustful for treats, for sugar, right? So he's saying practice prudence in all things. Neglect of this will lead to permanent degradation. And it says, but the wise man, the one who's practiced prudence. Oh, that's cool. He says the wise man, because he has practiced prudence, and the choice of his next life will be put into his own hands. That reminds me of my original husband. I was very ungrateful. Even if it was fake, I didn't know it was fake, right? So I still should have behaved different. It's very important in this time to be accountable. Um, I can't express that enough. And I'm not saying to bash yourself or let anyone else bash you. I'm saying I've been there, I am there, I live it. It's very important to be accountable, especially if you have spiritual growing to do. What if something big did happen and a large group of people did ascend, right? And the people who ascended, their bodies were still here. And so other souls migrated into those bodies because they weren't ready to go yet. That's what happened with Mary. They use the same word with Mother Mary in the scriptures. There's only a verse or two about it, but Mother Mary is taken up. She is harpazoed, raptured. Her body is taken away. Um, I think we have work to do, and I think maybe it's possible that these things do happen in groups like that. And if the book is true, I mean, I don't know if all of you are Bible believers, but if the book is true, this is not going to go on forever. And there will be a day, whatever that means, where God judges. Now, I think we also look at that in the wrong way. It's very, but, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea of God, but it is very, like they say, God is not a respecter of persons. He's not doing it necessarily to be a bad guy or to punish people. He's got to make the earth better, right? He's got to give the surviving humans a better home. Um, he has to show that he is just for the things that some people have done here. And unfortunately, it rains on the just and the unjust. It says the vicious, ignorant, and so wait, real quick. The wise man will have an advantageous transmigration because he has practiced prudence, and the choice of his next life will be put in his own hands. He gets to decide where he goes and what he does. That's so cool. The vicious, ignorant, and passion blinded man will, for the contrary reason, find himself bound to a wretched existence in some lower form. That's what this place feels like now. Plato's scheme of metempsychosis is conspicuous for the scope it allows to human freedom. The transmigration of the individual soul is no mere episode of a universal world movement, predestined and unchangeable. Its course is really influenced by character, and character in turn is determined by conduct. And I have failed epically in so many ways. A main object of his theory was to guarantee personal continuity of the soul's life, the point in which most other systems of transmigration fail, because Plato and Pythagoras, the chief professors of this doctrine among the Greeks, and Empedocles, none of whom call for detailed notice. That's interesting. So they disagree on that. It says the soul's course is influenced by character. Character in turn is determined by conduct. Okay. A main object of his theory was to guarantee personal continuity of the soul's life, meaning no veil of forgetfulness. Interesting. Apollonius of Tyana also taught Apollonius, Apollonius. Where did the rest of it go? Oh, also taught it. Okay. So that section is over. That's interesting. So they believe that you can actually have the choice. If your character is what it needs to be and you've been doing things you should be doing, then you'll get the choice. That's fascinating. If I would not have messed up in 20, I was doing so well with most things. But evil snuck in and I let it in. And so you need to be aware of that. There's something going on where we are all being tested. Don't fail, man. Please don't fail. I know what that's like. The doctrine of transmigration is not, okay, so this is India now, is not found in the oldest of the sacred books of India. That's interesting. But it's later, in the later works, it appears as an uncontested dogma. Wow. So they're saying nobody has tried to disagree with it, like their own agreement. Nobody has contested it and said, wait, that's wrong. That's not what it is. Everybody's just accepted it as dogma and dogma is like the practice of your religion, sort of. Okay. And as such, it has been received by the two great religions of India. The first one is Brahmanism. And Brahmanism, which is again the Philip K. Dick connection, that I like to start out with some of him because people are like, where did you get this topic? Why do you want to talk about this? And, I try to take you kind of through my journey as well so you can see how these things are revealed to me and understand that we are in some type of test. These are like testing grounds, but we are loved and there's constantly work going on by like the adjustment bureau that we can't see. Well, most people can't see. We're not supposed to see. So in Brahmanism, you find the doctrine of world cycles, of annihilations and restorations, sounds like the Hopi, and our Bible, destined to recur at enormous intervals of time. Guys, I also have that book. Nobody was interested at the time, but it's like from the 1800s, and it talks about specific times and dates when floods and tornadoes and things happened and in what areas, and telling about how it's cyclical. It's a good book, but people at the time weren't very interested. But again, there's a lot of proof and evidence that things happen upon the earth. They are cyclical, and it does seem to go also with our character. The more that we transgress, the more things get a little chaotic. And that seems to be cyclical too. And I'm not saying that we don't have free will, so please don't mistake that. So it says world cycles of annihilations and restorations destined to recur at enormous intervals of time. And of this general movement, the fortunes of the soul are but an incident. At the same time, transmigrations are determined by moral worth. Every act has its award in some future life. By irreversible law, evil deeds beget unhappiness. Sooner or later, these indeed are nothing else but the slowly ripened fruit of conduct, which every man must eat. Thus, they explain the anomalies of experience presented in the misfortunes of the good and the prosperity of the wicked. Each is eating the fruit of his past actions. So, not even anything done right now, actions done perhaps in some far remote existence. Such a belief may tend to patience and resignation in present suffering, but it has a distinctly unpleasant effect on the Brahmanical outlook on the future. A pious Brahmin cannot assure himself of happiness in his next incarnation. There may be the penalty upon the Brahmanical outlook on the future. Oh, that's wrong. A pious Brahmin cannot assure himself of happiness in his next incarnation. There may be the penalty of great unknown sins still to be faced. Beatitude is union with Brahma and emancipation from the series of births. But no degree of actual holiness can guarantee this, since one is always exposed to the danger of being thrown back either by sin or past sin. That's what I've said too. It seems broken. Like I can't get down with this belief, at the core because it seems broken. There are certain things that just don't fit, right? Okay, so now the second one is Buddhism. Let's see how different this is. Brahmanism is bound up with caste and is therefore strongly aristocratic, insisting much on innate superiorities. Buddhism, on the contrary, cuts through caste divisions and asserts the paramount importance of works, of individual effort, though always with a background of fatalism, which the denial of a personal providence entails. According to the Buddhist doctrine, the ambition to rise to the summit of existence must infallibly be fulfilled. And the mission of Gautama was to teach the way to its attainment, i.e., to Buddhaship and nirvana. It is only through a long series of existences that this consummation can be reached. Gautama himself had as many as 550 transmigrations in various forms of life. I can't get down with that. The characteristic feature in Buddhistic metempsychosis is the doctrine of karma. See, and again, though, we're getting back to that. Aren't you? You're always, as long as people are alive, you're always, even if you're doing a good work for this person, you might be hurting that person's heart because you're ignoring them while do you see what I mean? You're not doing anything wrong, but you're still causing harm. So if we're talking about karma, you can never work that off. That's what Christ is for. Do you see what I'm saying with all of these where it kind of slips away? You have to have Christ. But I do believe that there are elements of this that are happening. So how do I account for it? I keep searching, right? And I keep warning other people, be careful, we're being judged. Wake your heart up again, do things to wake up your compassion intentionally. I had to do that because of how far away from my true self I was, and thus how far away from God I was. Anyways, according to the Buddhist doctrine, the ambition to, okay, we read that. The characteristic feature of Buddhistic metempsychosis is the doctrine of karma, which is a subtle substitute for the conception of personal continuity. According to this view, it is not the concrete individuality of the soul that survives and migrates into a new life, but only the karma, i.e., the action or the sum of the man's deeds, his merits, the ethical resultant of his previous life, its total value, stripped of its former individuation, which is regarded as accidental. As the karma is greater or less, so will the next transmigration be a promotion or a degradation. At times, the degradation may be so extreme that karma is embodied in an inanimate form, as is the case of Gautama's disciple, who, for negligence in his master's service, was reduced after death to the form of a broomstick. See, I don't believe that either. And that almost sounds like one of those things that was made up to, like, scare children to be good, like, "Hey, one day you could be that chair I'm sitting in." You know what I mean? I just don't I can't get down with the inanimate object thing. I mean, it is made of matter and mass, but I just can't. Here's where we come to what's prevalent today and all of the changes that you're seeing, and some of us in observing people around us, we're knowing that they're doing something is different. And again, parents are good at noticing this when their children change, especially spouses, should be good at this. So let's see what the Jewish teaching on this is. The notion of soul wandering is familiar to the Jewish rabbis. They distinguish two kinds of transmigrations. Ugh, can I say that? Gilgul Neshameth, in which the soul was tied down to a life tendency of a single body. Ibur, in which souls may inhabit bodies by temporary possession without passing through birth or death. That's what I'm talking about right there. That's what I think has happened with a lot of people. I call it musical chairs of the souls. I don't know what to call it because all I knew is that it was happening. And again, I don't know if it's because I'm an artist. Well, I don't draw all the time, but it doesn't change, your creative drive or whatever. I've always recognized faces. I don't forget faces. I don't forget stories that I read. I don't really watch or read things twice because I've already know how they end. Even stuff that I really like, sometimes I won't read again because I know it all, right? And I don't want to take the time to read it because anytime I want to read it now, I can just remember it and reminisce on it in my mind. Discernment of spirits. Something has changed with people. And again, I think this is why they keep things in the family because in certain cases, if you want to let's what's propel, right? If you want to initiate this process, if you're the one who wants to be the driver, you don't want it to happen organically through God or nature or whatever process it normally happens through birth and death. You want to control it, right? And again, this is the plot of the movie The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy years ago. They were Buddhists and they put the soul in the singing bowl, and then they took the soul of the boy from the singing bowl and or the old man put it in the singing bowl because he was going to be the new Buddha or whatever, the new god, and they took the soul from the singing bowl and put it into the little boy. So now the old man was the little boy. You see what I mean? My question is, what happens to that soul that's already there? I'm pretty sure they have to consent to what's going on. They're getting consent through manipulation. I'm telling you, this is happening. And you don't have to believe me because I know how crazy it sounds. Like, I know. Josephus tells us that transmigration was a doctrine of the Pharisees. Holy cow. Now that's interesting. Because what have I said? Transmigration is something that what? The Nephilim either created or they initiate, they make it happen for themselves, right? Because they are doomed to wander the earth as wandering spirits. So, and they're calling this wandering souls, transmigration. Maybe they are the ones, like I said, doing this. If that is true, that means that the Jewish people are what? We have another case of imposters. That's why in Revelation it's called the synagogue of you know what? Because they did the old switcheroo like they always do. Right now there are Jewish people moving into Ukraine, a bunch of them migrating into Ukraine. Why? Because they wanted that land. You know what's going to happen, right? Now they're going to say that they're Ukrainians, poor Ukrainians, you were just in a war. They're going to switch places. Like they do it every time, all the time. They come in, take over a land, get rid of the leader or whatever, take over that regime, and then they claim to be the victim. I mean, if you read through history, we've talked about it a lot on this channel. So if you haven't heard me say that yet, maybe you just haven't been listening because we've gone over that a lot. So this was a doctrine of the Pharisees. That is fascinating to me. And we know Christ and them got into it and he said who their father was. So let's continue. They taught that the righteous should be allowed to return to life. Like they're not even going to God. They're just saying the righteous should be allowed to come back. Okay. while the wicked were to be doomed to eternal imprisonment. It was their gloomy conception of Sheol, like the gloomy Greek conception of Hades. That's what I want to know, though. Was this before? No, it says later. See? Later Jewish teaching. So this is whoever came in and took the place of the real Jewish people. And Christ said it's a doctrine of the Pharisees or Josephus. And he witnessed like the temple being destroyed and all of it. He witnessed tribulation. Like he was in that time. We're thinking it's right now, and I don't know. Maybe it's being repeated, but I think it had already happened at least once. Okay, so it says it was their gloomy conception of Sheol, like the gloomy Greek conception of Hades, that forced them to shift for a compensation to virtue. On the other hand, some of the Talmudists, we know what the Talmud is, right? Talmud invoke endless transmigration as a penalty for crime. Oh, what are they putting you into? The descriptions of the soul's journeys over land and sea are elaborated with a wealth of imagination, frequently verging on the grotesque. The retributive, perhaps, or purpose was rigorously maintained. If a man hath committed one sin more than his good works, he is condemned to transform into some shape of lower life. Not only so, but if his guilt has been extreme, he might be doomed to an inanimate existence. And see, I've told you that. The goal is to get us in such a state of guilt, certain groups, like for um, the past of America, they want you in such a state of guilt. They know why they're doing it. It's a supernatural, spiritual reason that they want you to feel that guilt. Number one, the things that are awake, the things that are in the national parks and coming out, some of the things that are responsible for some of the missing people are connected with that. And again, I know that sounds wild. Interesting. Okay, so and I did a video on this. I think it was when I talked about rules for life, how to survive in the trails. Michael or Friday the 13th. Jason Voorhees taught us how to survive in the trails and camping. Stay on the trail. Don't have nookies. Don't use any substances. Don't litter. Right? Like these are all things to keep you safe out there. Um, but if you are in a state of guilt, we've read according to folklore, these things will attach to you and they will follow you around because they are like magnets when it comes to the consequence of our sin. This is why we get condemned so much because certain individuals want us to have those attachments, those demonic, maybe even Nephilim, Sasquatch related attachments. They want those things following us. They want bad for us, whatever they can do to us in this time. And I'm not sure why. Again, I'm not getting the whole story, even in my own life. So there is a part of me, just like everybody else, that's blind. There's something I'm not seeing. So this is why it's good to share information as well. But again, I've seen some of these things do come to pass. And some of these things they at least believe because I see it in my everyday life. And I know and we did that. I think we did a search on that on folklore, and it said about how these things will follow you around from the forest. They'll follow you home, especially if you're in a state of depression, right? Depression. And a lot of times they'll blame certain things on mental illness when this thing feeding off of that part of you, that guilt, it will try and instigate more. It'll try and get you to feel more guilt so that it can stay attached. It's a symbiotic type thing. And this is why we call that type of attachment demonic, because it's a lower level energy force. And for lack of a better word, it is demonic. Okay. So if a man commits one sin more than his good work, he's condemned to transform into some shape of lower life. I love how they just decide like they're God. Not only so, but if his guilt has been extreme, he might be doomed to an inanimate existence. The following is a sample of what awaits the guiltiest of the guilty. See, and they dwell on this, like, I thought I started reading little bits of the Talmud because I just wanted to know, like, is it what people are saying, or do they want us to stay away because there's some, good things in here? And I didn't get very far. It was pretty dirty. And I'm just being honest. I didn't read much of it, but the portions that I did read were rather dirty. And they blasphemed Jesus and Jesus's mother and Mary Magdalene. Like it's all very accusatory to other people. There doesn't seem to be a lot of, okay, well, how do I do these good works? Okay, how do I be righteous? They're not understanding. Good works aren't enough. Once again, the Jewish group, whoever they are now, whatever group actually took over and took that name, they are very literal. The things there is no spirituality there. They say God, but they don't know God. Spirit you cannot see. Love is only in evidence through your behavior in your words. It is a verb. You cannot see love, but you can see the effects of love. They're trying to just do good works, like throw money at problems, right? Donating money, when that's not what it's about. Not at all. Feed the hungry, go feed them yourself. Clothe the naked, give them your coat. It's not enough to throw money at a problem. And they don't understand. In the end, if this is what they believe, they will end up the lower levels because of how they've treated people, because they never did any of those good works. With a compassionate or loving heart, they did the good works so they would receive something in the afterlife. But guess what? You just mucked yourself over because you're not going to receive nothing because you've had a cold heart about things, because your heart was not in the good works you were doing. Thus, they are not good works. God was not with you during them. So they're void. Just like the consent that they get through manipulating all of us. Oh, passive consent. We told you, we told you. I don't consent to passive consent. It's not legitimate. Consent through manipulation is not consent and it is void as well. Know these things for what's coming so nobody can force you to do things that you don't need to do. There is always a choice. Please remember that. I don't even want to read the rest of this because they make me so mad. I'm like, I'm trying to show everybody grace, that I really need and desperately need. But I don't understand why they're so focused on everybody else and they won't work on themselves. You see it too today in our society, and it's so prevalent. And the hedonism and the materialistic um, attitude just exacerbate that, I think. It's frustrating. And no, I don't have any desire to hurt anyone or hurt myself. I'm just saying it's frustrating. Like, how do you communicate with people like that? They have no, like, why are you going to go do that? Your heart's not in it. Don't bother. Just don't do it. There's no point. It just, they don't understand. Everything is literal. Everything is physical. Everything is like physical to them. You got to touch it. You got to feel it. You got to taste it. And that's it. And again, I know these people. I know people like this. And they're not actual Jews. Like, they're not Jewish people. You got to look into the Aryans and you got to ask yourself why there's so many blue-eyed, blonde-haired people around these days. I'm a rarity. I used to be very common and plain Jane, and I rarely see other people with brown eyes anymore. Legit. Like, I just don't. It's strange to me. I don't know, maybe you get your blue eyes when you, like, advance as a soul or something. But all the ones I've met have been pretty cruel, so careful there. And again, they victimize a group. They create the victims, but yet they hate victims and they say you have victim mentality. Yet they're constantly the victim. People like this who are constantly pointing to others and saying you do this when it's actually something you yourself are doing, you don't understand that you are, number one, you're slowing down this process for the rest of us. Some of us have been going through this for a while now, and we would like to be on the other side of it, where people have a period of at least some type of harmony, and you're slowing down our spiritual growth as a collective and bringing us down. Number one. Number two, you're not going to get to this place you think you're going to get to because everything is physical with you. Everything. That's why you go around and wear a black box on your head. That's not I'm sure, like, I've not even read where that's at, but I'm sure that's not what was meant by whatever was written. That's not how you get God. You get to know God through your own heart, through your heart. God has to live there. And God can't live there if you're constantly like accusing and pointing fingers and blaming. I know I get the finger pointed at me all the time saying you're not accountable. How much more accountable do I need to be? I have a whole channel of warning people, please don't behave like I did in my past. And for me, it was just a short time at a few different phases in my life. But I brought down like if this is real, then I'm going to be in like purgatory or whatever forever. Because and that's why you stay away from substances because they lower your inhibitions and they let another spirit in. You're not yourself. Okay. So it says the dark tormentors rush after them with goads of whips and fire. That's what they're saying if you're bad. Their chase is ceaseless. They hunt them from the plain to the mountain, from the mountain to the river, from the river to the ocean, from the ocean round the circle of the earth. Thus the tormented fly in terror, and the tormentors follow in vengeance until the time decreed is done. Then the doomed sink into dust and ashes. Another beginning of existence, the commencement of a second trial awaits them. They become clay, they take the nature of the stone and the mineral, they are water, fire, air. They roll in the thunder, they float in the cloud, they rush in the whirlwind. They change again, they enter into the shapes of vegetable tribes. They live in the shrub, the flower, a tree. Oh, okay. So then at last they are suffered to enter into the rank of human beings once more. After still further probations of various grades of human life, the soul will at length come in to inhabit a child of Israel. If it is in this state, it should fall again, it is lost eternally. How far these and such like descriptions were really believed, how far they were conscious fable, it's difficult to determine. That there was a fairly widespread belief in the doctrine of pre existence in some form seems likely enough. Again, in the next video that we bring this topic up, we're going to look into the actual process. How are you doing this? And again, that's when I think of that Eddie Murphy movie and the singing bowls. That's what they used for it. And is that what caused this? So are so many people into yoga not actually knowing what they're doing, meditating while those bowls are being, singing bowls, or laying down and falling asleep to them, and something that wants your life, that wants your body, because it wants to live again. Like, I wanna know how they actually accomplish this. I think I have coffee in my mouth. Okay, Christian ages. Saint Jerome tells us that metempsychosis was a secret doctrine. Ooh, now we're getting into the good stuff of certain sectaries of certain sects, sects, in his day. But it was too evidently opposed to the Catholic doctrine of redemption ever to obtain a settled footing. See, again, I believe that's what Christ is for. If you're going by karma or you're going by these other, you're never going to catch up because you're still living. And while you're living every single day, you're going to unintentionally cause harm. This is why we have to be careful, very careful, and not in willful ignorance. You're going to step on ants, right? You might step on a worm. What if that was your best friend in a past life? How are you going to get punished for that? Do you see what I mean? You're constantly, you would constantly be working off your bad karma. That's why that seems like a broken system to me, unless there's something I'm just not understanding. So again, please have I beg you guys, have conversations because I want to know what you think about this stuff too. And some of this we can actually read on the ancient Christian site as well. So it was a secret doctrine. That's interesting. It was held, however, in a Platonic form by the Gnostics. I knew it. And was so taught by Origen in his great work, Peri Archon. Bodily existence, according to Origen, is a penal and unnatural condition, a punishment for sin committed in a previous state of bliss, the grossness of the sin being the measure of the fall. Hold, please. That's the aspect of Gnosticism that I dislike. And again, sometimes our heart is conflicted because things sound bad, but that's sort of what we need. We have to examine ourselves. We have to get better. We need discipline. We need that resistance to be refined as a spirit, as a soul, especially if you're eternal. It should be a constant thing, right? So the Gnosticism, they look at the material as being almost completely evil. I don't see it that way, but I do believe that the Gnostics have a lot of wisdom to share. And this is why I point back to them with certain issues as well. So that's interesting to me. It's saying you can commit sin from the state of bliss, much like we read of Sophia, what she did. Her creating all of this was sinful because she didn't get permission, and she did it proactively, and she did it alone. She did not copulate or consummate with, and Sophia is allegedly the consort of God, I think. Or no, she's the daughter of the consort of God and God, I think. I might have that wrong. Again, we dip our toes into this stuff just to see where certain things come from. Because with religions, you also have people bringing their culture, right? And so you have to give grace for that too, because you don't want somebody to dump their entire culture to convert either. They shouldn't have to do that. And I'm talking about the way that they dress, as long as it's not a mod. You know what I mean? I'm talking about the way they cook, what they eat. Those things are, unless you're doing like human sacrifice, then it's different. So it says another effect of sin is inequality. All were created equal. He speaks only of rational creatures, i.e., men and demons, the two classes of the fallen. Men, women, and demon? I hate how they just leave women out. He does not seem to have considered it necessary to extend his theory to include lower life forms. Punishment for sin done in the body is not vindictive or eternal, but temporal and remedial. Indeed, Origen's theory excludes both eternal punishment and eternal bliss. I kind of reject part of that too, and I know other Christians and Catholics might get mad at me, but if we're eternal, we would be constantly working on ourselves, right? And if even the angels had a disagreement with God, then obviously, things happen, and our idea of perfection is not accurate, all right? And I think when Christ tells us to be perfect like our Father in heaven is perfect, he's talking about our heart, the circumcision of our heart. Are you doing the things that you're doing, your good works? Are you doing them for a loving reason, right? Are you taking your neighbor that dinner because you want points with God in the afterlife, or because you love your neighbor? Because if it's just points for God in the afterlife, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And so the whole work is void. God is not with you in a work like that. I This is something I feel like I have to keep explaining, because we have a lot of people out there now who are very mentally into the material and the physical and what they can see, touch, hear, and smell and taste. And that's not all that there is to this place. And our generation has done them a disservice by not having open conversations about spirituality and the soul. Okay, so there. For the soul which has been restored at last to union with God will again infallibly decline from its high state through satiety of the good, and be again relegated to material existence, and so on through endless cycles of apostasy, banishment, and return. See Origin. We should go read that in another video then, because we have that available on that ancient Christian text website that we found. The Manichaeans combined metempsychosis with the belief in eternal punishment. After death, the sinner is thrust into the place of punishment till partially cleansed. He is then reclaimed to the light and given another trial in this world. If after 10 such experiments he is still unfit for bliss, he is condemned forever. The Manichaean system of metempsychosis was extremely consistent and thoroughgoing. St. Augustine, in his De Moribus Manichaeorum, ridicules the absurd observances to which it gave rise. For traces of the doctrine in the Middle Ages, see articles on and the Cathari. I wonder if the Cathars. These sects inherited many of the cardinal doctrines of Manichaeanism and may be considered, in fact, as neo-Manichaeisms. Advocates of metempsychosis have not been wanting in modern times, but there is none who speaks with much conviction. The greatest name is Lessing, and his critical mind seems to have been chiefly attracted to the doctrine by its illustrious history, the neglect into which it had fallen, and the inconclusive. And so Jennings in England. Leibniz and others have maintained that all souls were created from the beginning of the world, but this does not involve migrations. Interesting. And the last part of this, I don't know why. Again, these are old writings that we're reading, so show them grace, please. Savage graces. It remains to touch very briefly on the abundant data furnished by modern anthropological research. Belief in transmigration has been found, as stated above, in every part of the globe and at every stage of the culture. That's fascinating. Oh, there's coffee greens in there. That's why. It's instant. You'll have that, I guess. Okay, so it must have been almost universal at one time because they're saying it was everywhere among the tribes of North America. It's also been found in Mexico. So there we have like the Native Americans and the Hopi, probably Brazil and other parts of the American continent. Likewise, among the Aborigines of Australia and New Zealand, in the Sandwich Islands, and many parts of Africa. It often takes the form of a belief in the return of long departed ancestors, ancestor worship, maybe, and thus provides a simple explanation of the strange facts of heredity. On the birth of a child, the parents eagerly examine it for traces of its identity, which, when discovered, will determine the name of the child and its place in their affections. Sometimes the mother is informed beforehand in a dream which ancestor of the house is about to be born of her. The belief in the soul as an independent reality is common among savage races. Again, I didn't write this. The departed soul was thought to hover round the place of burial at least for a time after death. Hence, among the Algonquins, if a speedy return was desired, as in the case of little children, the body was buried by the wayside that it might find a mother in some of the passers-by. A curious freak of superstition is the belief of many of the dark races in Australia that their fair-skinned brethren from Europe are reincarnations of people of their own race. Among the uneducated classes of India, as Sir A. Lyle tells us, the notion that witches and sorcerers, living or dead, have the power of possessing the bodies of animals still prevails. Astral projection and spying, that's how they monitoring spirits. A similar idea prompted the Sandwich Islanders to throw the body of their dead to the sharks in hope of thus rendering them less hostile to mankind. In the face of a belief at first sight so far fetched and yet at the same time so widely diffused, we are led to anticipate some great general causes which have worked together to produce it. A few such causes may be mentioned. One, the practically universal conviction that the soul is a real entity distinct from the body and that it survives death. Two, connected with this, there is the imperative moral demand for an equitable future retribution of rewards and punishments in accordance with good or ill conduct here. The doctrine of transmigration satisfies in some degrees both of these virtually instinctive faiths. Three, as mentioned above, it offers a plausible explanation of the phenomena of heredity. Four, it also provides an explanation of some features of the infrarational creation, which seems to ape in so many points, means copy, the good and evil qualities of human nature. It appears a natural account of such phenomena to say that these creatures are, in fact, nothing else than embodiments of the human characters which they typify. The world thus seems to become, through and through, moral and human. Indeed, where the belief in a personal providence is unfamiliar or but feebly grasped, some form of metempsychosis, understood as a kind of ethical evolutionary process, is almost a necessary makeshift. So they're saying it satisfies some of the things that some of the questions that they had about life and why they were here and who they were. Why is that in a Catholic encyclopedia? That's interesting to me. New Advent. Interesting. All right, there's one more thing I wanted to show you. Let me see if I can find it. Well, I can't find it. It's right here. Oh no. Yeah, 2 hours. It wasn't supposed to be this long. All right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this windows. which everyone will probably love. Again, I was just start making some decisions about that because it's just time that I did. So I hope you all have a great day. If you were here to the end or if you were here at all, thank you so much. You guys have a blessed day. I appreciate you. I love you. Remember, go do things that are kind out of the kindness of your heart, not because you're told you have to. Have a great day.